wonderful to be open to possibilities. Aye, aye, aye. Aye, aye, aye. Aye, aye, aye. Aye, aye, aye. Thank you.
What a great song. Thank you so much. And we have an opening reflection by Joan. Yep. Up to the microphone.
Hello. Is it picking up? Okay. Okay. Sol varp sonnen. Sun from the south, moon's companion, cast her right hand over the sky's rim. Sun did not see who labored in her shade. A gardener who had no heights to scale. Sun did not know where she had a home. Yet the gardener's hands found certainty in soil. Stars did not know where they belonged, while the gardener's boots left prints in softened ground. And as the gardener's work broached heaven's margin, moon did not know what strength she held.
Thank you so much, Joan. We've been, all except for the first session when we didn't have it crafted, we've been doing this Faithful Path Covenant. Would you please join your voices? As the Walker Faith Community, we fearlessly promise to include all opinions, and we affirm active listening. It is okay to disagree, but not to interrupt. We encourage speaking for yourself, awareness of others, and the vulnerability that entails. With active listening, we will strive for clarity, fun, love, and kindness. The Walker Faith Community is open to change as we work together toward the next chapter in our shared journey. So, we have also, in all of these sessions, other than the first one, recapped the previous one. You have received, we've worked really hard, and I'm very grateful to the work that Howard Krantz has done to make sure that communications get out in a very timely manner. And Henry has been really good about sending things out too, and I know the One Board has been on top of all this. So we're really grateful for that, because I think it's been very important to be very transparent and straightforward with everybody on all this. So here is the report on session 5. You've seen it, but I'm still going to go through it. And if there are things that jump out at you, raise your hand and we'll open the floor. There were 24 in the sanctuary and 7 Zoom people for a total of 31. That also includes people that couldn't vote, by the way, just so you know that, because they still count as people, even though they didn't vote. The opening music was by Kent Eklund. Just parenthetically, what a gift he has on the piano. It just kind of blew me out of the water, frankly, and it was wonderful. You know, I'm going to talk aside for a second. There's so much talent in this congregation, and you are not afraid of sharing it, and it's so authentic. It really is. Sally also read a very good poem. We then reaffirmed the Faithful Path Covenant. We did a recap of session 4. Paper copies were distributed at the gathering, and the earlier were emailed at the congregation. Again, you have all these. There's been quite a record. We tried not to kill too many trees because we sent a lot of it out digitally. We reviewed the 4 options and the New City Church proposal, which is also addended for you to see. 1, Walker owns and operates the building. 2, sell the building outright. 3, gift the building to another United Methodist Church. 4, gift the building to a nonprofit. One member proposed that Walker and New City merge their congregations, but that suggestion did not move forward. Dan Johnson, our district superintendent, joined our session to provide further information about the 4 options and by providing background and answering questions. And I think it was a good thing to have him here because he has further knowledge than I think any of the rest of us probably do. We decided to forego the table talk, and we had an open question and answer format, and that went on for much of the time. There was considerable discussion about the $250,000 loan, and it was clear that this obligation must be met. Dan Johnson confirmed that the Walker Parsonage Fund could be used to help pay for this capital expense, and suggested that perhaps the obligation be shared between Walker, New City Church, and the conference. And I don't think any of us had any notion that it could be a sort of a 3-way split, but that's sort of what he suggested and that he would advocate for. So I think that was a pretty reassuring thing, particularly because the parsonage fund cannot be used for any operating expense, but it can be used for capital expense and need. So you had your hand up. Yes, sir. Oh, wait a minute. I got to bring you a microphone. We don't want to neglect our online people. How many online people? How many online people do we have? 5? Okay, very good. Thank you.
The references to New City here, and especially under the ranked choice voting, assume that that would be who we shift it to. And the way it's written here, as far as who sharing, but especially under the ranked choice voting, it refers to New City Church as the United Methodist Church that would be gifted if that's the option. And that, I think that's if, conceivably it could be still correct. And this sharing also assumes an if that they would be the third party, not another church.
Right. That's exactly right. Okay. I'm going to pass the microphone. Somebody else wants to speak. We'll do this. You can take your mask off and speak.
Well, Fred, the vote was on gifting the building to another United Methodist Church, and there aren't. I don't know of any other candidates. So I mean, but it's true that the summary should not specify New City Church, although in the discussion it was specified. There was some specificity laid out by Dan Johnson.
Dan Johnson did say what other church would be. It would be New City. But you are correct. It wasn't on paper, and it wasn't an official vote on New City. So that could be a clarification.
There have been no official votes, by the way. There have only been straw polls. There are no official votes until we have the church conference. So that is when it becomes official. I saw a hand up over here. Okay.
Didn't the straw poll, won't that affect what we have on our ballot on the 11th? and therefore it is kind of an official poll, because aren't some things eliminated based on the straw poll? So therefore, that is part of the official kind of outcome. It's not a straw poll, it's actually a preliminary, kind of a primary.
Yeah, we just had a primary. That makes that, yeah, that is more like a primary. Yes, I would say that's probably true. You can't, yeah, if you're going to speak, you have to have the microphone.
We were told that everything until the 11th was straw poll, pulse taking, generating kind of the general thoughts and feelings of the meetings, but that there was nothing official until the 11th, but that's not turning out to be correct. No, it is correct. Not if it was a primary, and therefore things are becoming eliminated from the ballot that we will be allowed to vote on the 11th.
I'm beginning to wonder if people ought to come up front and speak instead of my running around to them. What do you prefer? Just bring it around. He had his hand up next, and then I'll come to whoever is that, and I'll come to you then. Jesse, I'll get to you. Yes?
Question for Tyler. So Dan Johnson suggested the three-way thing, and I assume that your membership would have to talk that over, because I don't see why people might object to that in New City. Why would you? I mean, it'd be great if you did, but it seemed like a big thing for you to decide to take on that third of the debt. So you can respond. I'm putting you on the spot, but Dan suggested that New City take part of the $250,000 debt, but that's Dan. I mean, your church would have to agree to that, right?
Here. This was directed to Tyler, so here's Tyler.
Hey, everybody, and hello to the online folks. Yes, so before last week, I didn't know that splitting it three ways was necessarily on the table, so I hadn't discussed that previously with New City Church. But I do know that the community is interested in the building, and so I have at least a strong hunch that they would be open to an agreement like that. And I do know that my finance chair has been kind of briefed in this, and he's exploring options for New City as well. I think the bigger thing that you're alluding to is that this vote is stating Walker's approval, as in the September 11th vote, it's stating Walker's approval for that arrangement to happen, but New City Church also needs to have our own process to be able to arrive at agreeing to that. But we didn't want to have that without knowing that this was something that the Walker community was interested in.
I promised our good friend Jesse the microphone, so he's going to get it now.
Thank you. I think the minutes ought to reflect there was a brief discussion or comments made pertaining to the obvious possibility that you could merge these two churches and make them one whole instead of two halves. I think the minutes ought to reflect that that came up. Thank you.
It was in the minutes, yeah. They were there, and I read over it. You're welcome. Now, okay, please.
Tyler, I'm guessing Tyler knows that.
This is for Tyler?
Yeah. Tyler, I'm guessing that you know that the expense that's being referred to is an expense that went into the capital rebuilding of this building. Yeah. Yes. Okay, it wasn't just some. Unknown expense.
Anybody else over there? Okay, I'll come to you. See, this way I'm going to get my 10,000 steps in today. It's good. It's good.
As many of you know, I have a hearing problem. But if I understood, Tyler, what you were saying was that you haven't had a chance to discuss assuming any part of this with your congregation. Is that correct? Yeah, okay, just with the finance. Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
So I'm just wanting to go back to what Fred brought up about what church could become owners of this building and or operators of this building, because it would always be owned by the church, right? So I just want to go back to, have you got some other church in mind, Fred?
Question for Fred.
No, it's irrelevant. We're talking about the recap of the previous meeting. And also, which led up to the ballot, the ranked choice voting, and there was nothing in the ranked choice voting that said New City. So therefore, it shouldn't presume it. That's all.
I'll come to you next.
This becomes another question for Tyler. Is this work? Is this testing? Thank you, Henry. So is it possible then, based on Carol's question, that we would vote to gift the church on the 11th? We'd vote to gift the church to another Methodist church, and then New City would say, well, after we talked about it, no, we don't want it. Is that a likely possibility or even a possibility?
I want people to remember that we did send out the proposal from New City Church. And it was pretty clear what that proposal was all about. And I just want people to remember, we've done that already. It wasn't like it was a big surprise or something unusual.
Totally, yeah. So the proposal that is on our tables is with the one right here, is with the full blessing of both the finance folks and the trustees folks and the board. So I've discussed this with the leadership of New City. What I was trying to say before is I haven't done a full congregational survey so that the folks who come like once every 3 months can weigh in or not. But everyone who's leading New City Church is supportive of this idea. So I don't foresee that happening. Yeah.
Thank you, Tyler. Now, just a second. We had one here, and then I'll get back to you. Here we go.
Well, I just, my impression at the last meeting that if it had just been give it to any old Methodist church, it wouldn't have passed. But the fact that we had the proposal from New City, and most everybody has great feelings about New City, that's why it passed. So maybe it should be specified in the final vote, give it to New City. I don't know.
I see this whole business turning on the debt and whether New City or how this debt would be serviced, or whether there's possibility of some or any part of it being forgiven by the lender. And I don't know how really we can move forward without that being resolved.
I'm going to weigh in for a second, then I'll give it to Casey. It was very clear the $250,000 has to be paid back. Initially, the understanding was, and Christine was crystal clear about that in our last meeting. She was completely straightforward, clear. What we had sort of bounced around earlier was that the $250,000 would be sort of, might just be the responsibility of Walker, might just be the responsibility of New City, and it wouldn't, we never thought the conference would weigh in on it. So what Dan suggested was a three-way split, which absolutely blew my mind. I had no idea that was even a possibility, and that takes a lot of the burden off any one of those, either New City or Walker. It takes a huge, I mean, we're talking the difference between $250,000 and a third of that is a lot of money. And Walker can use the parsonage fund to fund their portion of it. So it doesn't come out of operating or anything like that. We got a question here, and then I'll come back to Jesse. No. You've got to speak into the.
Who's the third party? New City, Walker, and the Minnesota Annual Conference. Thank you. Whatever that.
Well, that's the organization that Walker and New City are part of. It's the United Methodist Church in Minnesota.
Dan Johnson also said it's certainly not a sure thing that he would carry it forward if as a possibility. But there's another dimension, and that is two dimensions that I see, and one is that much of the cost of this building was contributed at random from many sources. It just came in, and it was quite a blessing, of course. Another is, of course, the upkeep of the building. Whoever owns it keeps it up, and maintenance is not free.
Good points. Thank you, Jesse. Are there anybody online that has questions?
All right, this is let's see. Okay, actually, maybe I'm just gonna bring in the Zoom folks, and then you can go ahead and say out loud rather than me reading your responses. So we'll start. Janet, do you want to unmute and say what you put in the chat there?
Unmute, okay. Well, I'm typing something else now, so what did I say?
Previously, you had just echoed the concern that some possibilities
Yes.
have been eliminated.
Yes, and I can't even remember which ones they were, but I remember that there was a significant minority that it was like maybe like what, a sixth or something of the people who were present who voted for like one of the third possibilities. Was it maybe between the type of congregations that we would become? I feel like there's a pretty significant minority that was interested in just becoming an independent congregation. I don't think I'm saying it right. Does somebody help me out?
Fellowship, maybe?
No, the two that won out were Fellowship and remaining a UMC congregation, but there was a third one, and there were like 7 or 6 people that voted for that. And I just feel like it's unfortunate that that one is completely off the table now.
Oh, you will? All right. Very good.
I believe that you're referring to the choice of disaffiliation, which only one person voted for.
No, there was something that 6 people voted for, 7 people. There's a fourth possibility. I can't think what it is.
So
let me respond. There were 3 different votes, and it's very easy to confuse them.
Yes.
The very first one was the decision to remain a United Methodist Church with very close behind. It wasn't even ranked choice because there wasn't any need for that. Very close behind. It's all written down on there. Yeah, it's right there. And so 17 votes for United Methodist Church, 13 votes for fellowship. The second one, there were votes between interim clergy, credentialed clergy, and there were a fair number of votes for people that wanted to be lay-led. But because lay-led didn't get enough votes to go on to the next round, their second votes went mostly to interim clergy. So that's why interim clergy got 17 and the credentialed clergy got 7. The last vote, which we did last week, 21 votes to gift the church New City, 4 votes to retain, and 3 votes to sell. So 75% of the total votes last week were to gift the church to another United Methodist congregation, and we talked about it as being New City with the proposal. So it's pretty easy to get confused with 3 different votes over a period of time, but that's actually the record will go back and show all that. So that's why we share it all. Looks like we got another question. You have something to follow up online? Oh, Benita? Yes, go ahead, Benita.
Oh, okay.
Oh, actually, it was about the debt to the lender. I think from one of the consensus that I'm hearing, we're all pretty clear that we feel it should be repaid. So I don't even want to see it be an issue that we even suggest that we ask or suggest that this lender need to forgive any part of it, because we entered into this with them. And I think it would be good faith, and the consensus seems to be there to continue to pay that.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
Yeah, I'd just like to address the concerns of Nancy Garenbeck Miller and others. This whole process, some people call it a straw vote. Straw votes, it's just kind of sounding out the will of the congregation in general. And there's no ballot that's going to be set on September 11th. Everything is on the table that day. And we can debate it. We can debate anything people want to. So there's nothing shut out. Nothing is off the table. Everything is on the table.
There are 3 resolutions that, pardon? Oh, there are 3 resolutions that have been prepared that will be presented, and resolutions can be adopted, can be amended, can be changed. It makes no difference. If the will of the body is to make a significant change, that's fine. That can happen at the church conference, which will be at 12:45 p.m. on the 11th of. The resolutions were drafted by, I put them together. I sat down with Tyler and with Henry, and we threw a copy to Dan to see what he thought. And after we cooked it all together, put it together, and we've come up with a piece that's being shared with the one board, and they're going to take a look at it and let their thoughts be known. And then, Henry, do you want to say something? Let me bring this to Henry.
I was just going to say to Conrad's point that so these resolutions that have been drafted are based off of kind of this process we've gone through, and the purpose for them is so that on the day of the conference, the church conference, we have a starting point, like you were mentioning and like David was mentioning about amending. It's a starting point for us on the day of the conference, and folks can put forward amendments to them as they come up. And also, the reason we have this resolution, that this is even a step in the process, is that we are required to share those resolutions with the entire church at least a week before. And so this Sunday, after the one board has a chance to look at them and make sure that as a body we feel comfortable about them, we'll be putting them forward to the whole congregation.
Coming. Thank you, Henry.
Just wondering if September 11th gives New Church enough time to know what it can do, or whether it makes more sense to push out this date until New City figures out what's realistic.
Do you want to respond to that, Tyler? And then we got to get to Casey. She's been very patient about having her hand up here.
Yeah, so what's being voted on September 11th is the process that will begin the authorization for the board of Walker to negotiate with New City and to work with the real estate agents and the lawyers and the denomination to be able to work that out. So there's going to be a lot of kind of negotiation between the two communities that's going to happen after this. But the vote that happens on September 11th is authorizing that and naming like this is the will of the community, and that and I should say that New City has done like I said, with the board, with our leadership, and also all of the donors of New City, we've engaged all of those bodies, and all of them say that they want to do this. So there is significant momentum there too. Wait, let's not have. I mean, you want the microphone? Oh. Well, I'm going to go to Casey. She's been the patient one here.
Well, it's come around again to the topic that I wanted to talk about earlier, which is we're going to have chicken egg problems here. We need to, as Tyler says, set a direction. A lot of steps. This is going to take a year of a lot of steps of going through the process and negotiating, and we can't solve all of those here. But as Tyler says, the board is authorized to go ahead, and the board will communicate with the community if there's any change from the direction that's suggested. It'll have to come back to the community.
Yeah, I think if you don't understand that this is a long process, it isn't going to happen. It won't be done by December. It might be done by December another year and a half from now. But it isn't going to happen that fast, I'm sure. Over here? He hasn't spoken yet, so Will.
I think, Casey, you just spoke to this, but it sounds like the concern is like, when does the decision-making power leave my hands as a common member of the congregation, and when is it totally in the hands of the one board or other people? So with I'm hearing the concern is like, when does the decision power leave this room and the community, and when is it all transferred to the one board and the parts that are going to be playing afterwards? I think you kind of just answered that, right?
Well, the real power is on September 11th at the church conference. That's where decisions get made.
I just want to say that some people are speaking as if this is a done deal, and it's not. I mean, I expect this proposal to be passed, and I hope it is, but it's not. It's not a done deal until it is, or something else could happen.
I'll get to you in just a second. Steve. Well, we'll let Steve speak.
Yeah, well, I just was wondering if someone could make it more clear. These resolutions have been crafted, and then the one board is going to see them, and we'll vote on those. Or can people? And I'm understanding that people could bring resolutions from the floor or something. So amendments, and so whatever is passed, will that say it's the intention of Walker to follow this path, and then when will that actually be you know, you say, what will be happening in this year and a half period that will affect that? Maybe I just go back to the one question of what will those resolutions, you know, not what is the resolution, but what will they authorize? Who will they authorize to do what?
I don't have an answer for that, but anyway.
I just wanted to make sure we tie up, if we can, Nancy's point about when the votes were taken. You know, there's a ranked choice, but then some things are not reflected in this paper. And I would suggest if the day on the 11th, if someone wants to add an option back in that wasn't on the paper on the 11th, I just feel like it'd be easier just to put them all on there ahead of time, even the ones that, you know, lost out. If it's going to slow that day down, just put them in. I don't know if that's what you wanted, but I think that makes sense.
Now, just so you know, there has been a very clear record of every meeting, of all the votes, of all the different parts. It's all out there. You all have copies of it. It came by email. Every single thing is there. So it's all available. And if somebody doesn't have something, we can Henry or I or somebody can send it off to you for sure. Absolutely.
I feel like you're tasked with an impossible task, David Wheeler, for a lot of reasons. And I'm not joking. And I'd like to just respond to a couple of things. Yes, I think that all the options should be on the vote. That is what I understood as this process was described to me, that these meetings were going to be conversations, discussions, pulse taking, straw poll taking, and that there was going to be nothing off of the ballot. But the ranked choice voting was going to be kind of instructive to us, perhaps as we're trying to figure out how do I want to vote. Well, here's some information that this like pseudo straw poll or ranked choice is providing as I decide how I want to vote. But I did not understand that it was official and it was going to eliminate choices in the end. So I just feel strongly to say that, and I'm assuming that there are choices already off that ballot. And I have not heard an answer to Carol's question about the possibility of pushing out these decisions. I hear that they're not final, but we can amend them. We can do this. It's, you know, oh, nothing is permanent. This is going to be a long, long process. Why are we placing such a huge importance on this vote if this is not a serious thing that we're trying to do here? And that just doesn't make sense to me. And another thing that I feel is a conflict of what I've been putting in front of me is two different things about we don't want to be worried about money. We want to think about how would we vote if money was not an issue. And yet at the very same time, the financial aspect, the loan that has to be repaid is of primary importance in this choice that we're trying to decide upon. And I'd like some, if possible, answer those particular questions about the possibility of pushing this out a bit so that we have more time to look at all of these kind of conflicting things in front of us. And yeah.
I'm going to stand up since I'm right up here in the front. So I come into this point in the process having missed a couple of meetings, and maybe these questions have been answered for other people, but I'll just start with, does ranked choice mean that, like, if a person voted for a second choice and their first choice was eliminated, then that's where their second choice got put?
Exactly, and that was only one ballot, that was ballot number 2.
Mhm.
And when the lay leadership, thank you, when the lay leadership didn't go forward, their second votes went to interim clergy. That's why that one won to start with, but it didn't have a full vote until we did the ranking. The first and the third one, they didn't need ranking at all.
And my next question is like, I don't totally understand the pros and cons of remaining a UM church versus becoming a fellowship. And I'm guessing it's not as simple as the financial aspects of it, but it's really unclear to me. So that's one of my questions. And the assumption is that if we remain a UM church, we're going to have to pay interim clergy. Whereas if we became a fellowship, we could use a more informal process of hiring leadership. Does that sound accurate?
There are many United Methodist fellowships in Minnesota right now, and they are United Methodist, and they have paid clergy. So just because you're quote unquote a fellowship, which had strong support, but it didn't win, it had strong support, that may be what will happen a year or two down the line. I mean, that's a very real possibility. But you've got some big things to work on and decide in the next year and a half with all of this transition. It's a huge amount. Okay. No, sometimes fellowships do have buildings. Yeah. You need to talk into the microphone.
No, I'm asking a question.
Yeah, but ask the question so everybody can hear it. Please.
I'm no expert on the discipline on this, but my understanding is that a fellowship does not meet in a United Methodist church, does not own a church.
That's not a hard and fast rule. That much I can say. Do you know, Tyler, more than that? Henry, were you asking something back there? Okay, just a second. I'll take this to Henry.
I was just gonna, to the point of whether a fellowship meets in a church, owns a church. Certainly fellowships regularly meet in churches. New City kind of as a good example of that. And the kind of, in the spirit of becoming a fellowship, part of that is doing away with some of the institutional weight that being a charter, full-on chartered UMC church is. Things like apportionments, operating the building as another example of kind of that institutional weight. And so that's where I would say kind of the spirit of becoming a fellowship would be, you do not own the building, you would be a regular tenant sort of in the building, very similar to how New City has been operating inside of our building.
So the magical thing in all of this is that on September 11th, New City Church will be chartered as the newest United Methodist Church in the state of Minnesota. I mean, no, it'll happen before the meeting. Yeah, so that, I mean, I'm letting you know that because that's the other thing that's happening, makes September 11th sort of a big time. Now, oh, there's another question back here.
Just a comment, I guess. I know there's grief among some and a fear of not having our building anymore and things changing, but we are gifting it to a young congregation that is growing. And I think we ought to be happy.
Amen. Oh, no, here you go. Sorry.
If we did something like the three-way split, would there be agreements made on maintenance of the building, that sort of thing? And boards would choose these things and the solutions. And I did see this. And well, this isn't the three-way split though. This is New City Church being gifted. So, which is a nice idea.
Well, what I think what you're getting at is how is the building going to be maintained? How are all of the tenants that use the building going to be taken care of and all that kind of stuff? That is sort of part of the whole process and the planning to make sure that the building is well cared for, to make sure that the tenants are well cared for. And I think New City is going to step up and be part of all of that solution, and Walker will be a partner in that. That's sort of my understanding. Tyler, am I speaking well in that?
So, and did I also hear kind of implied in your question is if there can continue to be kind of a shared leadership of the building as well? One of the things that I want to point out in the proposal is that on the bottom of the first paragraph, it says, if New City were to take this route, we would look to found an independent nonprofit to manage the building so that our respective churches can use the space without all the day-to-day fuss of stewardship. This would be a nonprofit, and a Walker community member could serve on the board. So one of the paths of continued collaboration that we're hoping for is that Walker, as well as the other long-term renters in this community, could serve on the board so that we can continue to collaboratively lead the building while also having kind of clarity of who does what. Yep.
So there would be a nonprofit board, there would be Walker, and there would be New City. Three entities.
Yeah, you could maybe think of it like New City would own the building, but this nonprofit would be the property manager. And then probably, ironically, New City would rent from the nonprofit that is the property manager of the building that we own, so that all of that could kind of be on even footing.
All these things, again, it's not all going to happen all at once. It's going to take time. There's going to be one of the things that we have prided ourselves in this process, even though I know it's there have been sort of challenges and kerfuffles and everything along the way. We're going to be really clear and transparent, and stuff will be out there. We're not going to be doing side meetings and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be very, very clear about what we're doing, and everybody's going to be included in the process. I've got a couple of hands over here.
One of the things about eliminating the debt is the service on the debt. We've been putting out like $16K a year to pay the interest on the loan. Well, so getting rid of that, that's good, okay? But there's no magic in the nonprofit because there's expense to that too. If you're going to have a building manager, you're going to pay a building manager, particularly if you want a good one. So, I mean, and it makes sense to me that tenants such as Walker would be chipping in on that. So there's no free lunch here.
One of the things about Walkers is they usually like free lunches, I think.
I think Emily's question implied confusion, I think, between paying off the debt and then the long-term plans of the church. The three-way split that's being talked about is purely paying off the loan to Christine, the $250,000. That's where it's the conference, New City, and Walker. Then the whole management thing that New City put forward in the proposal, that's something totally different. So I think that clarification needs to be there.
Yep, good point. Thank you. I'll go to Steve, and then I'll come to you.
Yeah, I don't know if you can clarify. I tried to ask what the ballot will look like, what the resolutions are about, and if you could answer that.
I think they've already been mailed to you, emailed to you, to the one board. Okay.
This answer only really applies directly to Steve because he's on the board. But Steve, it's been sent to you. But I was also going to suggest that we could just share them out right now as they are, because I don't have any issue with that. But I don't know. I don't know how other folks on the board would feel about that.
It was my understanding, we finished the final draft. It went through three revisions. We finished the final draft, and it was sent out to the one board for their review on Sunday, and then it was going to be shared beyond that in case they had to make some updates or changes. I think we ought to leave it that way because that's sort of what we had decided to do. Steve, you've got it in your email, and anybody else who's on one board will have it on their email. And we're not hiding anything. You have empowered these people to help make decisions for your congregation. Let them have first crack at it, and then there's no smoke and mirrors in this at all. So, just a second. I think we better stay where we are because we'd be here another 2 hours.
Yeah, I just wanted to share what they were about, if someone could say what the topics of the resolutions.
The first one has to do with these three things. The first thing has to do with the status of the church as United Methodist. The second has to do with leadership, and the third has to do with gifting the building. Those are the three. Those are the three main things that we've discussed and talked about. Okay, yeah. And they will be out before long. Oh, yes, you've got a, here you go, Jeff.
I think we certainly need to respect our board. We empowered them, and we certainly should not disconsider their input here, cut their legs off, if you will.
Okay, there's going to be no leg cutting allowed. Thank you, Jesse. Or Nikki, oh yeah, there we go. There you go.
Can I please just get an answer on, are we going to have two options for each of these four questions? I'm just assuming, but nobody seems to be willing. You know, we're talking about so much transparency and everything. I just like an answer for that, please. I feel like that's something that could be answered. And I have described how I believe that there was there was a lot of us being misled on we were going to just have choices at the end, and that they were just pulse taking along the way, but that's just not really how it's happening. And I'd like somebody to at least own that, and I'd like to confirm that we're going to have one of two for the 4 votes on the 11th.
Well, I will answer the first part of that question. And the first part of that question is, was anybody deliberately misled? Absolutely not. We have been very clear, very straightforward, very transparent. There's been no decision to mislead anybody. None. Absolutely none. Henry, you wanted to respond. You had your hand up over there, so I'm coming.
Oh, okay. I saw a comment in there. Yeah, on the question of, thank you. On the question of will we, like, what are you specifically voting on? You're not going to be voting like between two options on the day of, because given how resolutions work on all church conferences, what's put forward is basically a sentence, and then it's a yes/no vote on that sentence as it relates to each of these different resolutions. And so what will be brought forward, for example, I think that the one that is kind of the most hot button issue-ish one, is this question of church leadership right now, is kind of what I've heard reflected. What will be brought forward is a statement on church leadership based off of how we voted and that's the starting point for the conversation on September 11th. We'll be saying, I believe we voted at that session for interim leadership. And so on September 11th, there will be a resolution, something along the lines of, we are interested in interim leadership at this moment, and then there'll be discussion on the day of, and people could bring up an amendment and say, you know what, I want to put forward lay leadership. And then on the day of, there'll be a more discussion about that with the whole group. How do we all feel about that? Do we actually want lay leadership right now? Are we feeling more like we want interim right now? The September 11th meeting really is this opportunity for people to bring forward what they have as proposals that are outside of what has been sort of sifted through this process, if that answers your question.
And people will have, you will have these resolutions before you in the next week. We were told they had to be out exactly a week ahead of time. We'll probably be quick, sooner than that, don't you think, Henry? They'll go out after, I would think, the one board meeting on Sunday. So you could check your email Sunday afternoon, it'll be there. You can read through them, you can look at them, you can say what you like, what you don't like. You can come up with an alternative, an amendment to say we should have this and this. I mean, all that is certainly viable, but what we did is we went through with the discussions, with all the stuff, and we put it together in a way that I think makes a fair amount of sense. But if it doesn't make sense to a number of you and you want to do something differently, you can do that. The power is in the church conference and in the vote that will happen. Dan Johnson will be here to lead that meeting. So I will be available because I'm preaching that Sunday. I'll be here, but I will, again, I'm more of a facilitator. That's what my role is. These open sessions work pretty well. We get lots of opinions. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you. I forgot. I was just going to throw out that, so this upcoming Sunday, is that the 28th? Yes. The 28th, when the one board is reflecting on the proposed language, I would move amongst the board members that be an open meeting for anyone in the church can attend to at least watch what that process looks like as we read it and discuss it, and for you to have your comments in there as well. So certainly folks should feel welcome to join us. It'll be very brief. It's going to be like a 30, 45-minute meeting, if that, just looking over this document before we send it out to the whole church. So certainly if you have questions about the language of those resolutions, you're definitely welcome to show up to that Sunday after church.
Jesse has another comment. Here you go, Jesse.
Well, seriously, don't forget, let's not forget what consensus is. Consensus is when you agree that an issue carries the majority and you'd rather not vote a certain way, but the consensus is a certain way, and we have to make the decision sometime.
Walking Mike.
Would you be game to give your answer to what are the pros and cons of interim versus credentialed clergy?
Would anyone want me to go get the documents that we looked at when we made that, for that meeting? I know, Bonnie, you weren't there, but it very clearly spelled out what the options were. and that was the document that we worked from on that first meeting. Do you want me to go get that?
We can't, you have to use the microphone because there are people that aren't here.
She doesn't need me to go get the documents. All right.
Are you feeling a little bit talked out? Oh, no, not quite.
I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed. A lot is repetition for those of us who've been here every time, and we've gotten such good summaries every time. And, you know, I think at some point we just have to read our emails and
Yeah, I think, you know, it's been a little bumpy ride, but I feel good that people can come on the 11th and offer and argue for anything that, you know, they feel passionately about. And, you know, you might change my vote, you know, but that really feels good to know that because a lot of these things, you know, if you feel passionately about one thing that was kind of a minority thing, well, we just had to move on. And, you know, you can put forward something, a resolution that makes sense to you, and you may or may not convince the congregation.
Okay, you're going to put them on online? Okay, here comes the question online. Yeah, go ahead, Rhonda. You can who is it? Okay, you can unmute and speak.
Hi, this is Don. And can't be there because I got COVID, but I'm telling you, Paxlovid is the best metallic tasting COVID drug on the market. It has the best metallic aftertaste. So anyway, my question, I guess it's already been addressed, is that, you know, the thing with the leadership and the lay leader, I think that's potentially a great option for Walker. And it didn't make it in the rank voting, but it's going to be on the agenda on the 11th. I'm going to be there to champion it for whatever it's worth, and look forward to seeing y'all. Thanks.
Thank you for weighing in. Appreciate it. One of the things about this congregation is that you're not afraid to speak your minds. You're not afraid to disagree. And I think all of you, the way you've done that has been actually you weren't disagreeable in the disagreeing. I mean, you did it and you spoke your mind. I think that's a really healthy thing. It's really good. There's a lot of life here. There is a lot of life here. I feel it every time I have the opportunity to be with you, whether it's a Sunday or whether it's at one of these meetings. And that's really important because there are future chapters to be written. Well, friends, you came out on probably one of the most beautiful nights of the summer to spend time with your community. And this is one of the things that came out again and again and again is how important this community is to each other and to the community in which we live. Now, one of the things that you all do well is you like to eat. You like to provide food. And at some point, we should share in a meal together and sort of celebrate all that we have been about these last months. And actually, you've been about this for over almost a year in a real sense, because you started this last December, I think it was, wasn't it? And now we're going to go through September. It'd be 9 months. 9 months to birth something. Does that sound familiar? I can't tell you, no, I will tell you how much it means to me that I've had the opportunity to work with you all, to get to know members of this congregation as individuals. Sometimes I see you without your mask and I actually recognize you. But this has been a journey, and there have been a few detours, and there probably will be a few more. But you are on a path. And it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be demanding, and it's also going to be rewarding. And that I promise you. So as we go forth from this evening together, let us go forth in the knowledge that we are called to be a faithful community, that we are called to reach out to others who have need for healing, for hope, for sustenance, for meaning. Go in the peace of the one who loves you. Thanks be. Amen. Shalom.
Thank you, Henry, for everything, and thank you, everyone. It's good to see everybody. Oh, and Cheryl, I found out. Oh, never mind. This is the, okay.